Hello and welcome to Sobirov's live show. I'm your host, Rahmat Sobirov, managing lawyer of a boutique business immigration law firm in Toronto. Today is part 2 of a 3-part series that we dedicated to Canada's immigration levels plan. There will be part 3 next week, where we will be giving you top 10 challenges related to all immigration streams and our recommendation. So welcome to the show. We ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you for those almost 13,000 people who are following us on YouTube and other platforms. Thank you very much. With your support, we are growing our channel. And it's very encouraging to see that the number of not subscribed people who watch our content is decreasing. And we are aiming to bring not subscribed to 50%. Thank you for your help. So today, the technical aspect is that we will be discussing part 2 of a 3-part series. We dedicated 3 parts of our YouTube videos and live sessions because it's such a big topic, such a pivotal and fundamental changes are occurring in Canada's immigration landscape. And we discussed everything, all the categories, the temporary residence category, workers and entrepreneurs. Today is part 2. And this is a part that will also set the stage to our recommendation, which are coming next week. So in part 2, we will be talking about temporary residence. That's one of the main controversial topics in Canada's recent immigration system because there are almost 3 million non-permanent residents. These are temporary residents such as workers, visitors, and employers, and so on. We will be talking about that. And today, let me give you some outlook. If you wanted to just watch one slide, this is what's happening. The real numbers and what they mean for applicants. 1, comprehensive analysis of Canada's revised immigration targets. We are doing it in part 1 and part 2. Current data that we are using is as of November 2025. So data can be updated. So please double check. Impact on 3, we are discussing today, temporary visitors, workers, and entrepreneurs. So it's data-driven and honest assessment. We will be giving too many data points and lots of text. So my assessment will be very honest so that I even may suggest you consider other countries for the time being, okay? So this is an honest, unbiased opinion as much as we could in the circumstances. So technical points. These plans, immigration levels plan, has been adopted now. It was subject to adoption, but now it's been adopted. The Liberals managed to do that, the Liberal Party of Canada. This presentation, as I said, is very heavy in text and numbers because I want to give you the full picture. That's why we divided it into 3 parts, so it's easy to digest. Leave your questions in the comment section, and my team and I promise we will get back to you as soon as we can. So leave your questions in the comment section. Today, okay, that's the housekeeping item. The next one, what we are trying to achieve here is category by category, trying to explain the changes and the implications. Official policy on temporary resident visas, including tourists. These are temporary resident visas. This is the TRV, generally known as tourist visa. Sorry, that's my technical issue here. Okay. So official policy on visitor visas. One is that temporary resident visas or TRVs or electronic travel authorization. Some countries, they get ETAs. There is a list of ETA countries. It's not clearly mentioned. The TRV, the tourist visa itself, is not clearly mentioned in the levels plan for 26 and 28. As a separate category. They come under the temporary resident category, but not specifically. The workers are mentioned, the students are mentioned, but tourists are not mentioned specifically. There's no announced caps, limitations on new visitor arrivals. Arrival and visas can be a little bit different, but many people arrive without visa, so there's no cap there. And we will be hosting global events next year. The only formal policy restrictions that has happened with respect to temporary resident visas, tourist visas, is that Previously, Canada used to automatically issue 10-year multiple visas. And the visa officers used to be obliged to explain, if they don't issue 10-year visas, why they are issuing single entry short-term visas. But now that it's been reversed, if they want to issue long-term tourist visas, the officer has to explain 6 months single entry tourist visas at the moment. Maximum what we've seen after these changes is that there are issued visas, but for only 1 year. So this is in line with the objective to restrict limit the number of temporary residents in Canada overall. That's the big policy behind it. But as you can see from the data from 2024, between January to December 2024, there were more than 29 million people entering Canada to visit. It's an official statement. These individuals were not included in the temporary resident figures in the immigration plan, as they entered for short-term stay for purposes as tourism or visiting family and friends. But it's a bit ambiguous to me. Most TRV holders come to visit for tourism, see their family and friends. This cohort of people will be coming for the FIFA World Cup and many other events and attractions in Canada, were not taken into account in calculating the limit of temporary resident figures in the immigration levels plans. There's an implication of processing delays are increasing. IRCC backlog is at 38% as of April 2025. We got tourist visas for a delegation of 6 people from Central Asia, from Uzbekistan, in 5 days. So we see inconsistent processing times. Sometimes it takes too long. Sometimes it takes a few days to get approvals for tourist visa. This is a good news for our clients, but overall, the reality is very unpredictable. You have to check regularly for IRCC processing times. Refusal rates for tourist visas are rising. I think there's a stricter scrutiny for tourist visas. They want to really understand why you are coming to Canada and if that purpose is genuine or something else is going on with your objective to come to Canada. Enhanced background checks are now standard. They were exception before, but now they are standard. Proof of funds requirements have increased because they want to really understand, are you a genuine tourist? Will you be spending money in Canada? Or you are just trying to enter Canada to do something else? So verification of ties to home country are checked more rigorously. Visas are issued for shorter term and as a single entry visas. Be mindful of that. Government has to balance. We need to bring more tourists to Canada so that they can spend money. For example, visitors generated $41.1 billion to Canadian economy. They contributed in 2023 and 24 respectively. So I think it's a huge flow of people coming to Canada. We cannot totally close the tourism flow. Now, government has strong economic incentive not to restrict this category. They know it's important. That's why they're not capping it per se. This is the one category that is likely to remain relatively accessible for those who are genuine tourists and short-term visitors to Canada. Now, let's see about the enforcement. What's going on with tourist visa enforcement? One, IRCC is focusing on preventing overstays in Canada. Overstay risk will probably prevent you. They have the power to cancel your existing tourist visa if they find some information that will indicate that you will overstay in Canada. So watch out for your social media posts. What are you trying to do? You don't say, oh, I have a tourist visa. I want to go to Canada to look for a job. No, you need to be very careful about your social media posts. Applications flagged if visitors' intent appears to be questionable, okay? So your intent, when you are declaring it at the border while you are entering Canada, if it's suspicious, then it will be flagged and you will be scrutinized more. If you signal intent to transition to work or study permit, your application for tourist visa may face refusal. So that's the conclusion we've seen across our practice and our colleagues' practice. We can see that and feel that's the issue. Secondary effect of this enforcement is that tighter enforcement on visitors who overstay. So I think that we will soon see a kind of a mechanism to track those people who are coming to Canada on a visitor visas and they have overstayed their visas. So I think government is working on that front. Processing environment, as I said, processing delays are affecting all temporary resident categories, including tourist visas. But again, it's surprising that we got an approval in 5 days recently for tourist visa. Visitor visa processing is taking 4 to 8 weeks, depending on your jurisdiction, but it is longer, that's 4 to 8 weeks longer than historical norms that we used to see before. In certain jurisdictions like India or other places, Canada is giving longer processing times for that. High-risk jurisdictions, unfortunately, that's the case. I hope it will change. Strategic risk. If a visitor visa is intended as a stepping stone, this strategy is now very dangerous. There were a lot of unauthorized agents and travel agents saying that, oh, go to Canada on a tourist visa and then look for a job, change it inside Canada and so on. This strategy is very, very risky. You need to reconsider it now before you get into trouble. IRCC investigates applications for fraud and misrepresentation. Once they issued you a tourist visa, they can still investigate. And if they find some information that is against you, they may even cancel your existing visa with long-term validity of that visa. Best practice for you in this situation is maintain clear visitor intent. You are a visitor to the country without any signals about residency ambitions or long-term goals in Canada. If you're a visitor, be a visitor. That's the strategy that I would suggest. Now, let's switch gears to high-skill immigration. So we will discuss the high-skill immigration, whatever you qualified. I'll go with high-skill. And then we will go to low-skill and then to entrepreneurs, okay? So official targets regarding high-skill immigration are the following. High-skill immigration is within that 65% economic category. Remember, in part 3, we discussed that 60% of total admissions will be economic migrants. Within that 64%, you can include the high-skilled immigration. Economic category will be by 2027, around 243,000 people. So federal high-skilled programs are now secondary to provincial nominee programs. Why they are secondary? Because it's very tough, as we discussed in part 1, that it's very tough for you to make a transition to PR with one step, right? Provincial nominee programs and employer-driven programs will be the priority in Canada's new plan. So doing federal high-skilled program hasn't been chosen for the last 12 months. There were no express entry draws under federal skilled worker program, unfortunately. So provincial nominee programs are taking a priority in Canada's eyes. So PNPs targets have increased 91,500 in 2026. That represents 38% of all economic immigration. So be mindful of that. Yes, it's tough if you can do federal skilled worker program and hope for the draws to come in 2026, do that. But don't forget about PNPs, which are now of more importance to Canada's government, I think. Key policy shifts with respect to high-skill immigration was federal programs traditionally prioritized direct recruitment from abroad previously, but new approach is that provincial programs prioritize those with Canadian work experience. Again, that two-step process, two-step process. One, come to Canada, get your experience, and then get nominated, or go through Canadian experience class and then get your PRs.
Are you constantly on the move, managing your business, and looking for a convenient way to stay informed about expanding your business to Canada? Look no further. Introducing Speaking of Canada, the podcast that keeps you in the loop on all things related to Canadian business immigration, delivering the latest news, invaluable tips, and captivating interviews, no matter how busy your schedule gets. Speaking of Canada has got you covered.
So previously, as I said before the break, that federal programs were prioritized. That when you are hiring from abroad, hiring permanent residents from abroad, or selecting them from abroad, federal skilled worker and federal programs were priority. But now Canada's objective is to convert internal candidates, inside Canada candidate, into permanent residents. So then the new approach would be provincial programs or any government programs will prioritize those with Canadian work experience, like CEC or PNP nomination will be the priority going forward. This creates two-tier advantage or disadvantage, you decide, but it's a two-tier advantage over others is in Canada, applicants are 4 to 5 times more advantageous over direct immigrants who don't have any connection to Canada. They haven't studied in Canada or they haven't worked in Canada. Those are under disadvantage at the moment. We see that skilled worker federal programs, if you are selected, processing time is 6 months, but for the last 12 months, there weren't any draws focusing on federal skilled workers, unfortunately. I hope it will change in 2026, but who knows? We need to be cautious of the priorities set by the government. So express entry federal context, Canadian experience class is number one. Now fastest pathway for those with Canadian work history. That's great. Federal skilled worker, that's still available, but increasingly competitive. You gotta be young, educated, language skills, both English and French, hopefully, experience, and plus to that, express entry draws happen under the federal skilled worker program. Processing times, as I said, if they happen, it's quite fast, 6 months, and you'll get your PR. CRS, comprehensive ranking score, cutoffs have risen for the latest draws. Despite stated intent to expand recruitment, the government is trying to bring more talent from outside. But how? I don't know, maybe H-1B visas to work permit, yes. But high-skilled people from outside directly to PR, probably not so much, okay? And now, entrepreneurs, let's connect it to entrepreneurs because they are high-skilled too. They come to Canada to do business. Provincial nominee programs, very relevant, and the targets have increased from 55,000 to 91,000 people. Each province has its own different criteria, streams, and priorities. So you need to research one by one, and you can go to sobirovs.com website to find specific guides to specific province. Typical requirements, however, include if you are high-skilled worker, you're coming under PNP, that means you need to have a job offer. And once you get a Canadian work experience, like 12 months plus, then you can go to PR. Processing times in that scenario, as you can see, provincial nominee programs via express entry, that takes around 6 months. If you are outside, just without express entry, it takes 16 months. So average, I would say 12 to 18 months on average. The journey under PNP, I would suspect it would take around 2 to 3 years to get you PR. So that's the implication in the PNP context. In-demand professions, however, again, one category within existing categories, healthcare workers, technology, construction trades, skilled agricultural workers, transportation specialists have been the target in the last several draws. And again, in 2026 to 2028, they will be prioritized. Processing timelines for direct immigrants from outside of Canada, very tough, but still possible. Secure temporary work permit, come to Canada. First, under International Mobility Program or Foreign Worker Program, 4 to 8 weeks to get you the work permit. Enter Canada and establish employment, 1 or 2 months. You need to allocate that time frame. Accumulate 1 year experience in Canada, 12 months plus. Apply through express entry or PNP, depending on your situation, 6 to 8 months to approval. And then with the right province, you have 2 options. An option of CEC, Canadian Experience Class. Or if you choose the right province, the PNP saying that if you get experience in Atlantic provinces, you have another layer of immigration pathways. So choosing the right province makes sense. Go beyond Ontario or British Columbia. British Columbia has its own good programs, but in order to have two shots, CEC and PNP, you have to select the right province, at least until the moment you become a permanent resident. Then you can move wherever you want. Total timeline from that perspective is 2 to 3 years minimum to become PR, because it has two layers, right? The temporary arrival to Canada as a worker, doing your job, getting experience, and then switching to PR. Processing time for in-Canada applicants that are already working. I think this is the timeline and steps for them, which is advantageous. Accumulate 1 year experience. Many already have that, and Canada knows they have a great pool of candidates inside Canada. Apply through Express Entry, CEC or PNP. That gives you, runway of 6 to 18 months for approval. And as you can see, Canadian Experience Class via Express Entry, it takes about 7 months to get you to the PR stage. Total timeline as a whole for in-Canada applicants, I suspect it will be around 6 to 18 months, depending on your situation. Language requirements. So federal high-skilled programs, they are very demanding. TLB 7 standard. PNP streams vary by province, but typically CLB 5 to 7 will be okay. Some programs are okay with CLB 5. Francophone applicants, advantage due to increased proportion of Francophone candidates within the immigration targets. So you are very lucky if you're fluent in French, basically. Francophone targets outside of Quebec. These are, let's say, Anglophone provinces of Canada will be your destination. So key advantage factors for in-Canada applicants. Just to summarize, Canadian work experience valued very highly by both Express Entry and PNPs. Established provincial connection, whether your diploma from that province or your work experience in that province, will give you priority to certain and eligibility to certain PNPs. Evidence of community ties, rent, bank account, driving records, showing that you are actually committed to stay in that province. A job offer, if in designated occupation, if you have great job offer, then it's better move to that province where you got the job offer and settle down there, at least until you become PR. Francophone status, automatic priority boost, as mentioned before, and will be the factor to consider. Disadvantage factors for direct immigrants outside of Canada. Unfortunately, no Canadian work experience decreases your chances. No provincial connections. Unless you have a job offer from, let's say, Atlantic province, then you can go through AIP, Atlantic Immigration Program. Must first secure temporary work permit. That's a one-step, two-step process, and it becomes, delayed overall. Competing against in-Canada applicants, that is the biggest hurdle for those who are outside of Canada. You will be competing with a pool of candidates that have prepared themselves for permanent residency inside Canada. And of course, they have time zone advantages to talk to employers. Now, please don't get me wrong. Low skill doesn't mean low quality or low qualification. It's just the terminology. I think even people in those professions, trades and manufacturing, they have high skills. They're very skilled people. It's just the terminology, and I apologize. Many people were not happy when they hear the word low skill, but I agree that they are very highly skilled individuals in that sector. From low skill and in-demand jobs perspective, that immigration perspective, temporary foreign worker program is targeting 82,000 annual arrivals. International mobility program is targeting around 130,000 annual arrivals. Combined, there will be a space for 210,000 temporary work permits in 2026. Change from 2025 is modest, but not substantial, because economy depends on foreign workers, but stable historically. Overall, workers would come to Canada, and if they qualify and choose to stay permanently, they can explore permanent residence programs. But key distinctions in today's world is that temporary foreign worker program, specific employer sponsorship is now required, used for lower skill gaps because agriculture, transportation, construction, they are employer driven in a way. International mobility program, it's a broader category, includes intra-company transfer, professionals and international agreement workers, international treaties between Canada and that foreign country. It makes it easier for you to transfer yourself to Canada. Critical policy changes, however, these are new things that we see on the ground, is regional restrictions. They want to push foreign workers to the place where they are needed the most, not to the big metropolitan areas where the unemployment is more than 6%, right? Territory by territory, they are going granular in their selection. Foreign worker program now restricted in regions with unemployment of more than 6%, which means if the employer is in that territory and he's not exempted based on the industry of that employer, if the unemployment in your region as an employer is more than 6%, then you are prohibited from bringing foreign workers. Quebec is facing meaningful restrictions, unemployment near and above 6%. That's Quebec's way of dealing things. Rural and remote regions are prioritized. So basically, if you're going to rural regions, you have better chance to be employed there. The rural employers are more flexible in hiring foreign workers. Urban labor markets are increasingly constrained because more unemployment we can see is in the urban cities. Applicants in high unemployment regions will face barriers, of course. That's why you need to regularly check where your employer is located. And as an employer, you need to check your surroundings if the unemployment rate is more than 6%. Minimum wage requirements also have changed over the years. The federal foreign worker program minimum wage has increased by 15%. So check the minimum wages as the economy is struggling. The intent of the government is to deter abuse and protect Canadian workers. So that's the main objective of the Canadian government. Now, the effect, however, reducing employer demand for foreign workers in low-wage sectors, low-skill, low-wage sectors. So labor market impact assessments is becoming stricter. Processing times are still around 6 to 8 weeks nominally, but you can get faster. Approval standards increased rigorous checking. So approval is not that easy for LMIAs, depending on your location. Employer refusal rates are anecdotally reported by the industry, is around 25 to 40% refusal rate reported. And government is becoming stricter and stricter to punish those employers that were abusing LMIA system. So requirement, employer must demonstrate genuine recruitment effort at market wages before hiring a foreign worker. So eligible sectors. Now in 2026, sectors have more access to foreign workers, which are restricted and so on. High access is given to agriculture, agri-food, healthcare, long-term care, construction, skilled trades, and transportation. These sectors can relatively easily hire foreign workers. Medium access, more restricted, but still available. Hospitality and food services. There are some restrictions, but overall, these industries can hire foreign workers. Limited, very restricted is retail, general service, manufacturing in high unemployment regions of Canada. So again, things are changing and it's moving targets all the time. So these are the access to foreign workers at the moment. College graduates have been restricted. They are no longer eligible for 3-year open permit unless it's a designated occupation. University graduates still eligible, but subject to occupational alignment requirements. So master's degree is always exempted. PhDs are exempted from this restriction. So you will be getting a postgraduate work permit, but double check your program for sure. And language requirements, CLB 5 to 7 minimum to qualify for postgraduate work permit. New reality for those who want to work after graduating a Canadian university or college. Spousal work permit for postgraduate work permit holders is restricted on who can accompany you. The master students can bring their spouses. PhD students can bring their spouses and so on. So there are restrictions there. And again, this affects the labor market because not many students can participate in the labor market after graduating. However, there's an initiative that we mentioned last time to accelerate the transition of 33,000 workers to PR in 2026 and 2027. So roughly 16,000 people per year will be transitioned to PR, but we don't know yet. Eligibility criteria as declared by the government are the following. Workers who have established strong roots in their communities, are paying tax, and are helping to build the strong economy Canada needs. These are not clear criteria. We will see who will benefit from that one-time initiative that government has announced. Please note that IRCC has not publicly specified the precise work experience duration, specific sectors that will be prioritized, or detailed selection criteria for this initiative as of November 2025. It's ambiguous. Again, classic IRCC approach. We don't know yet who will benefit from that initiative. Additional details are expected when the program launches in 2026. So processing timeline for foreign worker pathway, low-skilled foreign worker or in-demand jobs application. Employer obtains labor market impact assessment. That takes around 6 to 8 weeks. Then applicant receives work permit based on approved LMIA. That takes around 1 month at least. Applicant enters Canada and works, let's say 1 year at least. After 12 to 24 months, the applicant may explore pathways. That also varies. The processing time we cannot predict. Total timeline for low-skilled or in-demand professions becoming PR in Canada takes 2 to 4 years from the beginning till the moment you become PR. Factors for lower wage workers, sector-specific shortages, agriculture in particular is very strong. Rural locations, less competition, priority in foreign worker program. Multi-year work history, if you have more years of experience in Canada, you will have better chances. Builds towards PR eligibility. It helps you to become PR faster. And one-time initiative, we don't know the details, but maybe low-skilled, in-demand professions will be included to fast-track to PR. Trade credentials like electricians, plumbers, construction, highly valued. Though government is working to recognize foreign credentials. Hopefully, it will become very soon. Disadvantage factors, however, there are disadvantage factors for low-skilled or in-demand professions. Sector restrictions, clearly, hospitality and retail are facing barriers. It's not that easy to hire the people for this sector. Regional restrictions, high unemployment rate areas are blocked from hiring foreign workers, whether they are low-skilled or high-skilled. Minimum wage requirements that reduces employer demand. Employer may choose, if I'm paying that much, a local Canadian. Postgraduate work permit restrictions. Again, fewer college graduates can have pathways to PR through experience. Employers are the gatekeepers now. Employer must sponsor you and support you or PR transition. It's not that easy. And some employers, they can, abuse that privilege of their status in your PR journey. Practical reality, however, seems to be that if your sector or occupation is in the exemption list, then foreign worker access may be viable even in high unemployment regions. So if your profession is in the exemption list, then that's great. If your sector occupation is not in the exemption list, foreign worker access or hiring or being hired as a foreign worker faces 2 restrictions. 1, wage must meet or exceed the provincial thresholds. And 2, work location must not be in the census metropolitan area with unemployment rate of more than 6%. Hospitality and retail occupations are not listed in the exemption list, unfortunately, and therefore these sectors, they face more restrictions in hiring foreign workers. For the initiative of 33,000 person one-time PR transition, IRCC has not publicly said anything, any details about that, unfortunately. Now, let's take a quick break and then come up with the business immigration aspect, what has happened and the implications for business immigration. All right, we are back again. Thank you for your patience. It's taking longer than I expected to go through all the slides, but we are at the final end of this presentation. Please feel free to put your questions in the comment section, and my team and I will get back to you as soon as possible. So the third category is business immigration, especially startup visa crisis, what we are experiencing at the moment. The collapse of the system is very clear. As you know, federal business category, we got 5,500 people in 2024. The target was 5,000, right? So we exceeded the target. Then in 2025, the target was decreased to 2,000. And that's a 60% reduction from 24. And in 2026, the target is now set to 1,000. That is 80% reduction from 2024. That's very big reduction, but it's only the reduction of slots in federal business category. Historic shift, as you can see, you can witness from highest ever approvals, lowest ever targets, as we can see in 2 years. That's a total shift. Backlog crisis in startup visa program is one of the symptoms of a system that is not working very well. That's the people's first applications can, if you divide 4 people per startup, per application, then it's around 10,000 applications, right? By mid-2025, we had 43,000 people in startup visa alone waiting for their results. If you divide them by 4 applicants per application, then it's 10,000 plus applications in the backlog. Average waiting time is more than 3 years. Some non-priority applications are facing 10 plus years of wait time. Backlog is growing, it's not shrinking, despite reduced intakes. Remember, the number of startups supported by designated organizations were not restricted before, were not capped. And recently, last year, they were capped to 10 startups per designated organization. Even that didn't stop for new applications coming into startup visa backlog. Refusal rates have also increased. Certain designated organizations, they are facing more refusals than before, 20 to 30% refusal rate. Angel investor groups are around 30 to 40% refusal rate. Business incubators are the biggest hit. Non-tech network business incubators, they are facing 73% refusal rate. But business incubators who are within the Canada's tech network, they are facing similar to what venture capitalists, 20 to 30% refusal rates. This is startup visa only. Now, the application caps were introduced, as you know, 10 startups per year per designated organization. Historically, each designated organization was contributing 100 to 300 applications to the pool, but now it's restricted. Create artificial scarcity. Whether it's smart or not, it's up to you. Please share your thoughts, whether that cap of 10 applications per organization was a smart move. Turns startup selection into gatekeeper function for designated organizations. Designated organizations became very strong gatekeepers. That perhaps explains why their prices were rising very rapidly recently. The prices for their networking, the price for their mentorship, and so on and so forth. Also, within that crisis, there's a possibility that many designated organizations are not in compliance with Ministerial Instruction 72 that is effective from 2024. Business incubators are facing 73% refusal rates due to non-compliance with that ministerial instructions. Create a 2-tier system, compliant, better approval odds, and non-compliant, nearly impossible. So if your designated organization is not compliant with ministerial instructions, most probably the startups supported by that designated organization will be refused. Tech network priority, that's a new element in the startup. Governments, if your designated organization is within the tech network, there are a few only organizations, then we will give you a priority. So with the help of priority, you skip the line basically, Applications backed by Canada's tech network members get priority processing. Fast track pathway, around 15 to 18 months approvals are possible for in-Canada applicants. We've seen that. We work with priority organizations on the startup. We have never been a big fan of startup visa program as it was implemented, as it was run before, but I hope the startup visa program will evolve, become a better program. Then we can discuss later. In our practice, around 1 year for priority processing to get the PR. It's quite fast, but non-tech network applications, they standard 3 to 5 years of processing to PR, if not more. Something that is positive for startup visa program is that Canada has introduced 3-year open work permit, which allows you, the applicant, to work somewhere else while you are running your startup. That was a recognition of the fact that startups don't generate money in the first few years, and startup founders need to make a living in Canada while working on their startup. So allows to work anywhere in Canada while PR application is being processed, reduces financial stress during waiting periods for startup founders, major improvement over previous 1-year closed work permit. Previously, they were issuing 1-year closed work permit. Now 3-year open work permit is a good positive development. However, now realistic financials for startup visa, it's becoming very expensive to do. Perhaps some people may consider startup visa and say, well, this is so much money I have to invest to something that is unknown. Maybe it will succeed or it will not succeed. That those candidates may consider PNP Entrepreneur Streams very seriously. So realistic funds necessary, according to our experience, is $200,000 per team member. So if you have 5 founders, that's almost $1 million. Designated organizations investment varies. They have to invest substantial amount of money. That's $75,000. And business incubators, that's not the investment, that's the cost of you becoming the business incubator program participant, right? So the cost of business incubator programs varies from $20,000 to $50,000, depending on the incubator. No requirement for personal capital investment. However, the cost of you to benefit from the guidance and mentorship of designated organizations, you have to pay. Plus, designated organizations, they want to see some money within the startup already. It shouldn't be a startup with empty bank account, right? They say, okay, we are putting some money to this venture. How much money are you putting there? So you need to have a skin in the game. That's why in practice, although it's formally announced as, oh, you don't need an investment, but yes, you need financial resources to be successful in the startup visa program. Okay, recent changes. Yeah, there were several dramas with certain incubator associations and venture capital associations. IRCC took direct control of SUV program recently. They halted peer review process managed by external organizations. They said peer review is important and that needs to be monitored. Created uncertainty and operational disruption. Of course, nobody knows what's going to happen with startup visa program, especially in light of the fact that Bill C-12, which is being processed now to become a law, currently in Parliament. It was introduced in October 2025. It grants IRCC power to cancel pending applications in bulk, en masse. Whether they will exercise that power or not, we don't know, but they will have that power if the bill becomes a law. That could affect thousands of startup visa applicants, unfortunately. Be ready for that. It will be very shocking news if government cancels those applications. Realistic assessment. Now, for most entrepreneurs globally, SUV is now effectively inaccessible because it's so crowded that even if you apply today, you may have to wait a long time, unless you are in priority processing, right? As I said, 43,000 people are in the backlog with only, so that's 43,000 could be translated to 10,000 applications, and there's an annual cap of 1,000 applications per year. That's a severe cutback by the government. Even approved applicants are facing 3 to 10 years wait time for PR. That's too long. There are faster ways. And again, Bill C-12, if it becomes a law, it threatens many applications in the backlog. This is part 2 of a 3-part series. Thank you for your attention, by the way. Next time, we will focus on top 10 challenges across all immigration categories, and we will give you our recommendations. So now that we have set the stage, what is going on, what are the priorities, what are the difficulties we are facing at the moment, now we will summarize the challenges and hope to give you some recommendations that can improve your chances of success in whatever category you are under. So make sure you follow us on social media. Make sure you leave us your questions in the comments section. Me, my team, and specialists will get back to you as soon as we can. I thank you for your time today. It was heavy. I understand, and I apologize that I took almost an hour of your time to give the outline of what's happening, what had happened, and so on. But next time, I hope we will go point by point, challenge by challenge, recommendation by recommendation, and answer your questions too. I look forward to receiving your questions. Thank you very much. See you next time.